Today is Monday, June 5th. The time is 5:30 and I call this work session to order. Ms. Solano, do you want to start us off?
Thank you, Madam President and City Council members and Mayor Gradisar. I just have a couple of updates tonight. The first is that just a quick ARPA update with what's on the agenda this evening is a request from a partnership with District 60 that is a Let's Talk About It, a middle school intervention and diversion program. And my co-presenter will be in soon, I believe. Moving on, I wanted to update on the Lights On for Safety grant. We've settled on, it is ready to announce the grant application process. The press conference is scheduled for Tuesday, June the 20th at 10 a.m. Details to location will follow. And the grant applications will open the following Monday. So there's adequate time for some social media, regular media, Q&A, flyer distribution, whatever can happen between that Tuesday and the following Monday when we'll open. The applications will be open until the funding is expended, and then I'll provide updates weekly on how that process goes. I'm not on a committee for review. The review committee will be made up of a representative from the Better Business Bureau, a Black Hills Energy representative, the Crime Stoppers of Pueblo representative, and a Pueblo Police Department representative. So they've got a good committee that will review those applications. It's first come, first serve. Moving on, I think Clyde's going to show you the flyer, the free transit for zero fare for better air state grant is ready to roll. All fares are free in the transit and city lift system for the summer, June, July, and August, with some special transit summer rides that are planned for Care and Share drop off and return, Pueblo Pride, and the Colorado State Fair. So transit rides for the summer begin this week is free for everyone. The information is out there and available on the city's website, social media, transit website. There's billboards throughout the city. And for more information, any rider can also call the Transit Center at 719-553-2725. So we're good to go with that grant. Lastly, the mayor and Councilor Atencio will be traveling tomorrow through Saturday. They're heading to Chihuahua, Mexico for a sister city event, and they'll be traveling with Councilor Atencio is the representative from the Sister City Commission, and they're also traveling with a delegation from the Pueblo Police Department. That does conclude the city updates this evening. Do you have any questions or directions from me?
Any questions for Ms. Solano? Okay, no
Thank you.
questions tonight. Moving on to the Colorado State Demographer. I think they're on Zoom.
Hi, I am here. Can you guys hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Go ahead.
Super. I am going to share my screen. And just let me know if you guys can see that.
Yep, all good.
Super. Thank you so much. Well, thanks so much for inviting me to be there. And I'm sorry I'm not there. But thanks for inviting me to participate today. So what I thought I'd do is go over some kind of big demographic trends impacting the state, and then kind of how it fits into Pueblo. So some of the big things that we are seeing across the country, and I'm sorry, I should probably put on my video. I noticed that wasn't on. Hi. Is that Colorado is growing at a slowing rate. So we are seeing some downward pressure on growth. A lot of that has to do with just some fundamental demographics, the fact that births are down and deaths are up. But we're also seeing that migration and mobility is slowing. So we're also seeing some downward pressure with migration as well. We are seeing within that growth, concentrated growth within the Front Range, and that has an impact on the state. About 95% of the growth has been along the Front Range compared to historical trends, which was closer to 80%. Aging every day. And, this is actually one of the bigger impacts for Pueblo. So I think that will be something to keep an eye on, as well as kind of the impacts with the births. So both the slowing in the births and the changing in the migration and the aging will all have some impacts. And the fact that we're growing more racially and ethnically diverse. Slowly but surely, I think it's taking birthdays for that to happen. So just to kind of prove the point on the growth that we're seeing is the fact that, the United States is slowing down. And so if the US is slowing down, that's going to have an impact on Colorado, which will have an impact on Pueblo. So the US did grow over the last decade, but it was its second slowest growing decade ever on record, second slowest to the Great Depression in the 1930s. So again, if the US is slowing, that's going to put downward pressure on Colorado, as well as counties and municipalities. Colorado grew this last decade by 14% and 744,000 people. It wasn't our fastest decade, it wasn't our slowest decade, it was right in the middle. But these last 2 years have been pretty significant. We've slowed down to a growth of about 26,000, a growth rate of a 0.5% annual, so less than 1%. And that is significant. It's about a third of what we saw annually, an average annual last decade. So we are starting to see this downward pressure. As well as the fact that we've seen between 2020 and 2021, 17 states lost population, total population. And this last year, between 2021 and 2022, we saw 19 states lose population. If we look at that growth in Colorado, the blue component is natural increase. It's the births minus the deaths. So we can start to see some downward pressure on that natural increase, again, because we've seen a slowing in births and an increase in deaths. And net migration as well, slowing down. We saw it kind of peak in 2015, and then it's been slowing ever since. So pre-COVID, we started to see the slowdown. So it wasn't just a COVID impact. If we look in the state of that growth, the growth over the decade is on the left-hand side, so red, orange, yellow, positive. All of the shades of blue decline, so we see that concentrated growth in the Front Range. We can then see the growth in Pueblo County over the decade, so a growth of 9,000, about a 5% growth over the decade, so a 0.5% per year, about. Then we can see within the county where we've seen the growth, most of that being in Pueblo City and in the unincorporated areas. But again, what you'll see is that about half, if not a third of the growth that we saw in terms of a rate for the state as a whole. So down, what I'd say slow but steady is probably what you say a lot in Pueblo, is slow but steady. We're seeing growth, but it is at a very moderate pace. If we look between 2020 and 2022, on the right-hand side, red, orange, yellow, positive, all of the shades of blue declines. We see this kind of hollowing out of the city center. We saw Denver, Boulder, Jefferson with absolute declines in population over this 2-year time frame. Again, weird years, right? But we did see growth in Pueblo County as a whole, an increase of 600 people, so not a huge amount of growth of 0.2, about half the rate of the state, which was at 0.5. So in there, again, what I would say is slow but steady, and about half to a third kind of the state average. If we look at kind of these components of population change for Pueblo, on the chart on the right, on the left-hand side, the green are the births in Pueblo. The blue, light blue, are the deaths in Pueblo, and that black line is the net migration. And that thicker black line is the 0 mark. And so one of the things that you can say is that peak births in the county were in 2008, and we've seen a slow, steady decline in births, which is exactly what we're seeing in the state. We're also seeing that in the country. We're seeing the increase in deaths, primarily because we're aging, but you see that spike the last couple of years because of the impact of COVID. And you'll see that migration is kind of all over the place. Sometimes there's larger amounts of migration, sometimes there's lower levels of migration. So it really does have a very jagged component. If you were looking at averages, you would say probably somewhere around 1,000 people per year is the average annual, but it's kind of all over the place. If But you will see that you are now in a phase of natural decline where we see more deaths than births. And that's what you can kind of see on that right-hand side. If we take that information and we look at total change, the total bar is the total change. Blue is the natural increase, which is the births minus the deaths. We'll see that you're in a phase of natural decline in the county, which I think might be that might be a natural state in the future, with just fewer births, more deaths. It might hover around 0 to a negative, but not anything significant on the growth side of that, which I want to talk about in a little bit. But you will see that net migration has been positive, even though we're seeing a phase of natural decline. We've seen positive net migration, and a lot of it has to do with also with your relationship with El Paso County. That drives a lot of change and a lot of growth. There's a lot of links and connections between the two counties, being really centers in southern Colorado. Definitely Pueblo more than El Paso, but bigger anchor communities. But I do want to talk a little bit about that slowdown in the births. So we've seen in the country an absolute decline in that under 18 population because of the slowdown in births. In the US, we're seeing about 625,000 fewer births per year in the country than we did back at its peak in 2008. For Colorado, we're seeing about 8,000 fewer births per year. So that's having an impact. And if we look at the state, we've got about 43 of the 64 counties had an absolute decline in the under 18 population over the last decade. Doesn't matter where you were: Eastern Plains, San Luis Valley, Western Slope, Central, Mountains, Denver Metro, Front Range. So we see Pueblo with an absolute decline in the under 18 population, but likewise we see Jefferson and Boulder, absolute decline of about 1,600 over the decade. So, obviously this will impact school districts across the county. And so that's something to be looking at if you already haven't been. You've heard about in the Denver metro area. So we're seeing that really across the state and across the country. So this is not that unusual. So we've kind of talked about births and deaths. The next piece is net migration. And that's the other piece of population change. And so we've seen positive net migration in Pueblo. And so it's curious always to know, well, what kind of folks are you attracting? The chart on the left-hand side is Pueblo. And so it's showing what kind of folks are attracted to the county. And so we see kind of the adults in the 30 plus, and then definitely older adults. And we see some kids, but we see a net out in what we would consider the young adult population. A lot of times you see that in a lot of places, even though you've got a university, we're seeing this net out migration of that age group, because you probably have more folks than than would actually like net in for the migration for the university. But we see that in a lot of places because kids leave. Kids go on and look at different opportunities in different places. That positive in migration really usually has either something to do with job growth or relationship to counties close by. And I think a lot of that actually has some relationship to El Paso County. With El Paso County getting more and more expensive, we are seeing that kind of link with Pueblo and driving some of that growth in the population, because I'll show some other information on the job growth that would indicate that it's probably not the jobs, especially for that 30-something. But then if you look at the 50, 60, 70-something, we see that in migration. I think we've really realized that for a while, that you do attract retirees. It's a little bit warmer where you are. And so that attracts it attracts migration for the older adults, and is probably a little bit less expensive. And you've got some access to health services. So again, you kind of tend to be this regional center in the south part of the state, and so attracting people to the county is not unusual. I want to compare it on the right-hand side is the Colorado average. And so very much for the Colorado average, we see, very concentrated at that 20-something, not a lot of young kids, not a lot of older adults like in Arizona or Florida, but you do differ from the state average. And so this is the net migration rate per 100 people, so that you can look at kind of Pueblo and Colorado in comparison to each other. And then just real quick on why do we see net migration? Typically, we see migration to an area because of this relationship with jobs. When we see stronger job growth, we tend to see stronger net migration. When we see weaker job growth, we see weaker net migration. And that seems to make a lot of sense, right? That a job is a person. And so when you see this job growth, you end up seeing a resulting population. But I will tell you that a lot of times, especially in the Denver metro area, they don't seem to understand that, because a lot of times it's like, Elizabeth, I am sick of people, no more people, we don't like people. But they're very, very excited about job growth. So bring it on, we want more jobs. I'm like, wait a minute, a job is a person, that housing unit's where that job sleeps at night. So it's really hard to have one without the other. And we can see that over time with blue bars with the job growth, the red line is the net migration. The other piece, though, you see from this is if we look out into the future, we're forecasting a pretty significant slowdown in job growth as well as net migration. Why is that? Well, because the US as a whole is slowing down. So, 70% of the economy is driven by consumer expenditures. If consumers are slowing down in terms of growth, that's going to slow down consumption, slow down job growth. We slowing down in terms of labor force. So a job only counts as a job if you've got somebody that can take that job. So that's why we're starting to see this slowdown and slow down into the future. So what does that economy look like, and what have we seen? And that's where I found things really interesting with Pueblo County as a whole. The map on the left-hand side really shows the growth in, what I'd say the recovery in jobs from COVID. So it was looking at the comparison of jobs relative to the third quarter of 2019 compared to the third quarter of 2022. And red, orange, yellow positive, all of the shades of blue decline. So yes, as a state, we'd have recovered all of the jobs in terms of total numbers, but not every county and not every industry. Some of the industries still behind in jobs include mining, what we would consider arts, entertainment, recreation, and the accommodations, food service. So kind of the big sector of leisure and hospitality, as well as local government. So but we see here that Pueblo had recovered. And then what I wanted to do was compare some other counties to Pueblo on that right-hand side. So kind of that dark green where I've got the arrow pointed at it is Pueblo County's jobs. And a couple of things I want you to see is that, and it indexes everybody to 2002 so that you could see relative growth from that point forward. Purple is Weld. And so they've had some very fast job growth. El Paso, which is kind of the brown, is right next to it. And you can see some similarities between El Paso and Pueblo. But one of the things that I really noted is that during the Great Recession, we don't see a big digger. We don't see a big trough like you see for Denver. Denver's that lighter green. We didn't see a big downturn because of the Great Recession. Pueblo kind of stayed nice and steady, did lose some jobs, but not a ton. Then we can see as Pueblo moves into the future, and then we can see COVID, we see a decline and then a rebound. So not a huge decline like we see even in Weld. So Weld's not back to that pre-COVID level. We don't see the big decline that Denver saw or even that the statewide average saw in terms of that decline. So again, what I would suggest is kind of like a slow and steady and not maybe overly reliant on one industry or another that would have brought you down or had, you know, what we would consider exceptional growth, like what you see maybe in Weld County. So kind of a very interesting situation for Pueblo. But I did want to mention housing a little bit in terms of, you know, this whole idea is that this relationship between housing and job growth and households. And one of the biggest challenges that Colorado's had is really tight housing markets. It's been tight in the country. And a lot of that has to do with the Great Recession. The Great Recession did a doozy on the housing market and construction market. It was really one of the most significantly impacted industries. You know, it was kind of the big financial blow up, right? And so if financing wasn't available, it was really hard to get financing to build homes. And on this chart, what we can see is the orange bars are new housing growth and the black line is household formation, so people that would live in housing. We can see pre-Great Recession, so pre, you know, 2008, 2009, we were building 40 to 50,000 housing units a year in Colorado. And it really tumbles down to less than 10,000. So for several years, almost 10 years, we underbuilt in terms of housing compared to households. So that's what created the really tight housing. We're back now to building 40,000 units a year. I think we're going to get up to the 50,000. We'll see what that total number ends up at for 2022. But that means that we're starting to recover, which is great to see because that will then help with prices. And but we've still got this boom and bust situation that somehow we've got to figure out how to manage better, because that's what really throws us into, you know, a whirlwind tizzy. It's when we are not matching up better housing units and households, because on both ends, if we overbuild, then we end up, you know, prices fall, then we lose those companies. But if we get, you know, like something like a big recession, then companies fail and we lose companies and workers. So neither thing works out well when we've got this imbalance between housing units and households. So where are we in terms of building permits? Well, we're definitely back on building permits. If we look at the chart on the left, that's Colorado as a whole. It's broken down by single family, multifamily. We're back. You know, we had our highest level of building permits ever in 2021, even higher than the 90s when we had that exceptional growth within the state. On the right-hand side, we've got Pueblo. And again, looking at where Pueblo was pre-Great Recession, we can see up building, you know, more than 1,200 building permits per year, fall to about 200 building permits per year, now up to about, you know, somewhere between 500, 600, 700 building permits a year. So not a huge rebound, not the rebound that we saw for the state as a whole, but again, interesting to see where we've got it. And then lastly, I'm going to just really quickly talk about age, because I think age is probably one of the most important variables that we watch and that we watch in Pueblo. So we've got Colorado on the left, Pueblo on the right. What we can see on for both graphs is the slowdown on the left-hand side of each graph. Really that slowdown in the kiddos. So we can definitely see that slowdown in Colorado. We've got fewer 0-year-olds than we've got 60-year-olds, for example. So we definitely are seeing this slowdown. And we see the same thing in Pueblo, where we see fewer 0-year-olds than 60-year-olds. And in Pueblo, we see kind of the peak age groups right around that 20-something. So definitely highlighting the influence of the university, and probably also a little bit of the folks from maybe Fort Carson that might be living in Pueblo that work at Fort Carson because they're pretty young as well. And then you've got another peak in that kind of 60-something age group, those baby boomers. But in both cases, for the state as in well, and for Pueblo, a lot of people are going to be aging out of the labor force this decade. And that's going to have a significant impact on this tight labor force that we already see. We already see a tightness in the labor force, and really in Pueblo and in Colorado, forecasting that as well. So over this next decade, we're forecasting about a similar increase that we saw last decade, about 9,000 people, but about 70% of the growth in Pueblo, we are expecting to be in that 65 plus. Not necessarily because everyone is migrating in, it's going to be a combination, if we look back here, of people aging into the 65 plus, but also you saw on that earlier graph the fact that you guys attract older adults. So a lot of the growth in the older adults, some growth in that 25 to 44-year-olds as well. We hope if Pueblo can attract and retain, because that's going to be that labor force that you're going to need to help provide services for those that are aging, as well as to fill positions for those aging out of the labor force. So kind of that demand for that entry level is going to be pretty significant. If we look at the changes across the state for both the school age population as well as the working age population, so school age on the left, working age on the right, Pueblo, we're again forecasting a decline this next decade in the school age population. So 2 decades in a row. We also see a decline in the Denver metro area in the school age population. So we will be seeing this consolidation and slowdown of schools and in school districts. So this should not be a surprise for a lot of places that we are seeing this slowdown. On the right-hand side, we see a growth in the working age population. Pueblo still showing positive in the working age population growth over this next decade. So kind of the peach and red and orange are counties increasing in the working age. Those blue counties declining in that working age population. So at least that's positive that we're still seeing growth in that working age. But if we look at all of those counties south of Pueblo, looking at that decline. So lots of implications from the aging. And this is, I think, probably the most significant for Pueblo, because you do have that large group of 60 plus forecast to grow, the boomers really aging into probably the non-working age population. So really seeing the fastest growth in that 65 plus, also an impact to that labor force. So not only aging of your own labor force working for jobs in Pueblo, but also potentially those that are going to be aging that were working in El Paso County. A pretty big impact on housing and household size. So like, for example, if I were to age into that 65 plus this decade, I plan on staying where I live. So the next state demographer is not going to live in my house. So the question in Pueblo would be, as Pueblo goes through this aging, where would that new labor force live? Are you building enough housing to accommodate not only new jobs that will be coming into Pueblo, but also those that are going to be retiring and then need somebody to fill their position. Likewise, we see the millennials aging into home buying and second home buying, the Gen Z also aging into primarily rentership right now, but also first-time home buyers. And do you have the services to help support that aging population? I think that that's always been a question within the county. Do you have the services and the aging services to help support that aging population? Because you're going to see one of the more fast growing aging population. So taking all of that information and then moving forward, the way that we forecast the population for Pueblo is we look at jobs in Pueblo. We look at jobs that are forecast to grow in the United States and in Colorado and Pueblo's share. We grow those forward, and that's our labor demand. We then take our current population in Pueblo, apply birth rates and death rates to that population, and that is our supply of workers. Where they don't equal each other, we see then net migration. So our forecast really is for Pueblo to have positive net migration over this next decade, primarily because we're forecasting job growth and we're forecasting people leaving the labor force. So some of those other factors are listed there on the right-hand side that I've really talked about. But, you know, I guess the biggest takeaway is you will be seeing faster growth in the 65 plus. You will continue to see a very tight labor force, and housing is going to be continuing to be part of that discussion as well. So we take that and we look at it across the state. We still are forecasting growth in the state, even though it's at a slowing rate. Over the next 3 decades, forecasting Colorado to increase from 5.7 million to 7.4 million by 2050. The red, orange, yellow is positive. All of the shades of blue decline. So we're seeing kind of a slowdown declines on the Eastern Plains, San Luis Valley, a couple of counties on the western slope. And you can see that really still Pueblo being that center in the southern part of the state, but understanding that some of those counties surrounding Pueblo, we are forecasting declines. But for the next 2 decades, really around between that 9 and 10,000 between 2020 and 2030, and then 2030 and 2040, and then slowing down to probably somewhere around 5,000 over the decade between 2040 and 2050. There are undoubtedly a lot of uncertainties in this forecast and risk to the forecast. I've listed many of them there, but I have taken a ton of time, so I will stop there and see if there's any questions, and I'll stop sharing my screen.
Thank you, Ms. Garner. Any questions for Ms. Garner? Councilor Martinez.
Thank you, Madam President. And thank you, Ms. Garner, for that comprehensive look into Pueblo and the state. I guess I just have one question for the future. Can we reach out to you and or your office to ask some more follow-up questions, as this is a lot of information to digest now? Can we reach out to you in the future?
Absolutely. So anytime you need anything, that's kind of why we exist, is to work with local government. So yes, our door is always open, or our phone's always open.
Great. We see your contact information right there as well. Thank you.
Councilor Flores.
Yes, thank you for that information. Here in Pueblo, we have our own economic dashboard that we produce every month. And when I look at demographics like this, I'm looking for opportunities. And one of the big opportunities that we have in Pueblo is making Pueblo a place where maybe retired people want to move to, on the basis that our median price of a house is almost half here of what it is in Denver, and about 3/4 of what it is in El Paso County. And you know, one of the benefits of that is that we are seeing some migration from retirees in the northern part of Colorado that have not prepared for their retirement, and they've discovered that they could use their equity in Denver, move down to Pueblo to a nicer house, and still have money left over for putting that in their retirement plan. In fact, I have 2 neighbors that are exactly that, a lady from Lakewood and a gal from Inglewood. Are there any other, that's a question about whether or not you see that as an opportunity for our community. And I'll stop at that question. I've got 2 others, but could you address that?
I agree with you 100%. I do think that this is an opportunity for Pueblo, but it's something to plan for, to make sure that the resources are there to accommodate that growth. You know, you saw from that kind of net migration by age chart that you do attract older adults. And the question is, you know, if half of your growth over the next decade were to be folks in retirement age, you know, let's say 4,500 of that 9,000, can you accommodate it? Do you have the health services? Do you have the housing? Do you have the workers to support the folks that are aging? Do you have the emergency management capacity to accommodate that piece? But certainly, I think that is an opportunity for Pueblo.
You know, one of our problems now is filling job vacancies in Pueblo, which is very ironical. But since birth rates are falling drastically, it would seem that school districts would not have a shortage of teachers. They have less kids as they're moving along. But as I understand, there's still a teacher shortage. And what's causing that? I mean, if the population is going down, you would think the district do not need more teachers, but that's not, if you ask most school districts, they can't find teachers.
Right.
What kind of anomaly is that creating?
So really that is almost this perfect storm. The fact that we've actually got so many people in those kind of 50 to 60-year-old age group. A lot of them were working in education. So we've actually got more people retiring from teaching than we have entering into the teaching. And so that's what's also creating part of this challenge. I mean, in one sense, we're lucky that, you know, we are starting to see a slowdown in growth in the kiddos, potentially not making it as bad to try and attract workers. But it's interesting, if you look at the average age of teachers, it's older, and a lot of them have been in that age group set to retire.
My last question had to do with the Denver Post article that came out, I think 2 weeks ago, it may have been 2 or 3 weeks ago, that's indicated that 80% of all apartment dwellers in the Denver metro area could not afford to purchase a home, which was it's a mind-boggling number. But I also see that with remote workers that we have an opportunity in Pueblo to maybe attract young people because of the fact that they could probably afford a house in Pueblo. And the Denver Post is telling us that 80% of all apartment dwellers can't afford a house in Denver in the metro area. It seems like that would be an opportunity for us too.
Yeah, I think that is definitely an opportunity, and that you'd have to look at it because 100% remote is not as common. I think the average nationally is somewhere around 12 to 15% of jobs, of all jobs, could be done completely remotely. So if there's going to be some kind of a hybrid situation, like if you have to go into the office 1 or 2 days a week, your proximity is cut a little bit. But we have folks that work for the state, for Denver, the state, and live in Pueblo. So we know that people do it. They make that drive. So it would be also looking at, you know, what is it that would attract, you know, the young adult to Pueblo, and what kind of opportunities are there for them in that home buying as well. You know, I'm going to guess that homes are also fairly tight, you know, that there's some constraint in supply in Pueblo as well. So it'd be looking at, you know, can you continue to actually keep up with production in Pueblo? But the other thing to take into account with those 80% that live in apartments that can't afford, one of the biggest demographic factors of those that live in apartments is also that they're young. So a lot of youngins just aren't making a lot of money yet to be able to afford to buy. So
thank you. Yeah, thank you for addressing that. Appreciate it.
Any other questions? Councilor Atencio?
Yes, speaking of that 9,000 population growth in Pueblo, if half of them are a retirement age, I see it more of a challenge to us to be able to attract the younger generations, because the older generations, they require more resources and they don't spend as much money as younger people do. They're not going to be buying, they might buy a house, but it's going to be a smaller house. It's going to be a less a house that doesn't need as much maintenance, for instance, things like that. They don't travel as much. They don't drive as much. So a larger retirement age population could be a drain on a community if we're not careful. So I see it more of a challenge. This is for council more than anybody, that we need to, the challenge is to bring younger people into the city rather than trying to attract older people. Not that we don't want to attract, we want to attract anybody who wants to come, but my point is that let's not focus on the retirement age because it could be a drain on a community if it gets too much.
Yeah, I think that it's a good point to look at a balance, being able to attract both. And so having both the, the community factors that a younger adult would want, as well as an older adult. And older adults, the nice thing about them is that they don't tend to boom and bust like a lot of industries. Maybe their multiplier isn't as large, but they don't tend to boom and bust. So they're a nice factor to have in a lot of communities because they balance out some of the other pieces, and they do spend, but it is, again, you have to be careful. A lot of it is in leisure and hospitality as well as health services. So not always the highest paid jobs, but certainly you see Florida and Arizona managing all of their older adults as well.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you, Ms. Garner, for that presentation. Appreciate it.
Super, thank you guys.
Okay, next we have Southern Colorado Fashion. And I'm not even going to try to butcher your name, so maybe you can give it to us when you come up.
Thank you.
Hit the button in front of you.
Awesome. All right, Worship Council, thank you so much for this opportunity and allowing us to be here. And a special just shout out and gratitude to Councilor Martinez and for allowing us this invite. And also, President Graham, I just want to take a moment, like who you are and what you're doing within our community, and also being a young woman that is cultivating in leadership. Like, I just wanted to take a moment of appreciation for that. So yes, my name's Shakara. Shakara Arazola Tiscareno, and I reside at 197 West Legend Drive in Pueblo West, Colorado. And I am the founder and producer of Southern Colorado Fashion. And then I also just wanted to allow an opening and opportunity for one of our collective members.
Can you hear me? There we go. My name is Zoe Medine, and I'm here in support of Southern Colorado Fashion and in support of Shakara and what she's doing for the arts community, for the younger community here in Pueblo. And I've modeled for her in her last showcase in spring, and it was a beautiful moment for younger generation of the arts community here in Pueblo. And something else I was going to add, but I will conclude in saying that I really appreciate what she's doing and the community she's cultivating.
So I would love to allow all of you, of course, who I feel it is so crucial for us to have connections with our leaders in our community. And so I really just want to honor just all the work that you've and the roots the deep roots that are being put in, and just really see how it can continue just to branch and just grow and foster. So Southern Colorado Fashion and who we are, and we're really here to bridge the gap between art and society. And so I thought it was a perfect segue from, I believe it was Elizabeth. Yeah, and it was beautiful as far as like, we know, right, after kind of just what we were experiencing with COVID and how it really hit the economics of our community, that we see kind of those leisures, the arts, the entertainment are still coming back, right? Still trying to thrive and allow themselves to grow within a business. But the beautiful thing that is here in Pueblo, there's so many hidden gems, there's so much resources, there's so much community support. And when we're doing this and we're coming together, it's not only fostering creatives, talents, it's humanitarians. We're creating big movements for our whole community. And that's not just Pueblo, that's the Southern Colorado region. And so within that, we're articulating, like, we have people driving from Trinidad, from Beulah, Canyon City. We actually have some that are driving from Denver, just to be a part of what we are cultivating. And that is great for Pueblo. A little bit about me. I've been in the fashion industry for over 10 years, and I've had the blessings to be able to travel nationally and internationally. I've been, published, and I've been signed. I've worked with a lot of other well-known, just what people say, like in society, like supermodels. I've been to New York and participated and walked in New York Fashion Week, and, have done extras and filming and acting. And my degree is in human growth and development. My minor is education. And so I take everything from my experiences, but also my traits and my skills and my education to cultivate what we've created in Southern Colorado for not only fashion, but for like art, for talent, for expression. And so our demographic, it's beautiful. We're really into supporting diversity and inclusion. And I think that's so important. There's so much diversity here in Pueblo. And I'm so proud to say that we have currently models from 16 all the way to 66. So we honor all ages, all demographics, all sizes, and everything we're cultivating are all like growing entrepreneurs. So this is a great way for us to continue to band arms, right, for our next generation that is going to be fostering, supporting, and really holding us at our time when we're aging. So our main thing is local connection, and that's what really drew me to kind of coming to leadership, right? And to really coming to like our worship council and to what you guys are doing. And when I went and looked on, like what your missions are and what you believe in, it's very similar to what we're cultivating. And I loved hearing like just some of, like counselors' questions that they were asking, and like, well, the focus of our youth and bringing that development. And that's exactly what we want to do. And that's exactly what we are doing in a little bit of like a smaller movement, right? So with your support, we can make and break bounds. So we've been working with like I think it's like Mad Productions and like Javier, and really with the youth development. We've been providing a lot of workshops. There's a lot of people that are open to this, but maybe they just don't have the skills or the education. So we're going to help build everybody up, give them what they need to be able to feel empowered, to feel cultivated and have that authentic expression. And then also to be an entrepreneur for themselves, right? How wonderful would it be to be able to see the Riverwalk in downtown Pueblo, all with small business owners again? And so we're really here and we're fostering not only Southern Colorado from like Pueblo down, but we're also working with Colorado Springs in their Fashion Week and collaborating with them in Peak Region. And that's not only allowing Pike Peak Region, but that's also going to be like, oh, what's up, Pueblo? What are you guys doing? So it's a great opportunity for us to just continue to grow and expand and let people really see what we have in our community. So forward thinking, right? Like, what is Southern Colorado fashion really going to bring to our region? And so in 5 years, I can definitely see Southern Colorado fashion being as big as Denver Fashion Week. I've had the opportunity to grow with Denver Fashion Week when I was living there. Also, but just seeing it's the hub of Southern Colorado and the art and the just what we have, like, right? We have the levee, we have the murals, we have all this beautiful art that's already been here for generations. Like, I think it would be a great way to bring people into our community, but also just to show longevity within our community. And so strength and comes in numbers, but also with our youth and with our development. And just what we've had with the youth coming in, we did like a fashion workshop and we're working with them and I'm teaching them how to sew their own beanies and being able, right, to make their own clothes, because not everybody's able to afford name brand or to have nice clothes, but just the feeling to be able to create and to do that for yourself. And just the response that we got from parents in the community and from the kids, like I would love to expand and to be able to support like young, right? Like 8, 9, all the way up to what we're already doing in the 60s. And so we believe like to do this, you have to be able to have like mentorship, leadership development. And within our collective alone, just with models, like currently I have 45. And that's not even with our new casting going into our August workshop. And this is our first year. And so just alone in our first year, we're almost reaching 100+ people that are in our collective that are directly Pueblo community. So why is Southern Colorado Fashion here, right? And so really the main thing is we're here to ask for support, whether it's sponsorships, grants, donations, facility access, venues, however it be. When I was talking to Councilor Martinez, and, you know, like I would love when we get sponsors, like I think it's very important, like when people are donating and sponsoring, they want to see where their money is going. They want to see where it's contributing. And I would love to put that back into council and really allow that. And so when we were speaking, the teen center, that is a possibility, I would love to honor and cultivate that. And there's different things, like I would love, instead of our shows being quarterly, like let's do something monthly for the community, right? Let's do a bunch of different workshops, and I have all on the side different ways that we can contribute and kind of what the community is already speaking on how they would like to grow, on what they would like to see. And again, it's just going to nurture our next generation of entrepreneurs. It's providing more opportunities and cultivating within the community. And then of course, we would love to be able to give back with the support and with those sponsors. And so we're feeding, right, these venues and these systems, and we're just allowing all of this money to stay directly within our community. And that's what we need. And so just an example, right? The beautiful thing when I first met Zoe is through Bowback Gallery. And that is a great space that cultivates for our art community. And that was the first place to really give me the opportunity to set foot. And so we were going anywhere from like $300 to $1,300 our last showcase, right, for venue. I'm at a place now where we have beautiful kind of growing problems, right? And so many people, like we're already booked for our winter case in January, but I don't have a space yet big enough. So kind of looking like across the street and at the Asante de Cristo, for a 2-hour rent, it's like at least $1,500 to $2,000, okay? And then when we're looking at like monthly rent, like if you get kind of, you know, more of the outskirts of Pueblo, it could be like $450 for a really tiny space. And then you're looking at like downtown, right, Riverwalk, like rent can get up to $1,500. So just being mindful, like if we can have the cultivation of the opportunity to have community space to foster this development, whether it be the teen center, you know, and really cultivating that, I think as a whole, that would be really beneficial for what we're trying to do and how we're growing and the challenges we're experiencing currently. And then venue, like annual venue costs. So this is just for our very first year, we're spending $6,000. And then, right, we're talking about commercial space and trying to get into that. And so, of course, any business when it's first building, you would hope that by the first 3 years, they're able to stand on their own, right, and have like that organic growth, because we know it's like 5 years that you fully have to invest to really see a change. But we're in this for the long run. And I'm brought my family here. I have a 4-year-old, you know, we have the house here. And it's the same thing. We came from Denver, coming down, being able to expand everything that was just said prior. And I want that. I want that for others. And I see it happening. And I see so much opportunity here in Pueblo, Colorado. And so, like I mentioned, our youth development. So you're like, how are we going to make this work, right? How is it going to be something where it's like longevity. So what we require and within the members, right, is if you really want to make this and stay within Southern Colorado Fashion and be a member of our collective, you have to contribute 20 hours of community service. So whether that's you participating in the show, whether that's you participating in the youth development, but when we have 50+ people and they're banding together to volunteer 20+ hours, we can support one another. And so this just really allows us, with your support, to provide more opportunities for our creatives, artistic talents, and just really serve the underprivileged, our inner cities, the youth, and just to continue to grow and expand the Southern region. And so we're a collective of creatives and visionaries and just aspire to create a positive impact through passionate work and just being purposeful with our intentions and our commitment to pay it forward. And thank you.
Great presentation. Do we have any questions from council? Councilor Martinez Ortega?
Thank you, Madam President, and thank you, Ms. Arazola and Zoe, for coming and giving us your presentation. Couple quick questions. One, if somebody wants to get involved to be a model for the day or want to start learning fashion and design or some of the different arts that you want to do,
Yes.
how would they get involved, or how would they be able to contact you?
Beautiful. Yeah, so I believe you guys have our sponsorship packets and I gave you some like little stickers and our business card, so they can directly contact us. I like to open up all forms of communication, whether it's via phone, email, directly through our website. If they don't even want to contact me and they're like, I want to do this, they can just automatically sign up. We have workshops that are specifically for new talent, for returning, so that way we can honor everybody on where they are in their pace and their journey.
Great. And your Pueblo Fashion Week or your event is August 26th, correct? And where is that going to be? Give us some of the dates and locations and stuff or
Beautiful.
times.
Love it. Yes, thank you for asking. So Counselor, our full fall showcase, and this will be our final showcase for 2023, is going to be at the Ethos, which is Pueblo's first like sober bar and community bar. And I love what they're cultivating and what they're bringing. So this really honors, right, what we're cultivating as a family-friendly experience. And with that being on the 26th, which is going to be a Saturday, it would be from 6 to 8 p.m. This is where art meets fashion, right? So art comes in so many various forms, and we're really going to display that and how it's such a wide spectrum. And then from there, we have included, it's a tier on however you want to do your investments for tickets, so that way everyone's supported. We're then going to Boback for our after party from 8 to 10, and we'll have live performers and all of that as well, and just really allow everyone to just honor and celebrate everything that we've been doing and cultivating.
Great. So you're going to be at Ethos, which is in Bojontown on Mesa and like
Yes.
Egan, or just off Santa Fe. And then you're going to go down to the Grove for
To-
the after party.
Yeah, to the Boback.
Yes.
correct.
And lastly, I would like to request staff to put us together, if all of the other counselors are in agreement, the gold $1,000 sponsorship package for your event, if that's agreeable to everybody.
Yes.
Do you have any question? Any other questions? Okay.
Out of council contingencies.
Yes.
Yes.
I do have one question.
Counselor Flores.
Are you organized as a nonprofit or a for-profit business?
So the way it is right now is full profit. And when I was looking at debating and with nonprofit, we know there's so much that goes into it. And as far as grants, I'm at the place right now where I'm still like a one-man team, right? If I were to invest in someone to apply for grants, it's at least $125 a month to be able to hire, and within that fee. Everything right now that I'm doing, I also have a holistic practice. And so that's kind of the buffer of what's coming in funding and allowing us this cultivation. So I would love to get it to that opportunity, but right now we're not at that place. Yes.
Counselor Tencio.
Well, my suggestion is, can you get under a nonprofit's umbrella so that we can donate this $1,000? Because
Yes.
we don't really give money to profitable organizations.
Totally.
Nonprofits, we help out a lot, but so if
That-
you can get under an umbrella of a nonprofit, then we can help out, because I think the activity is worth it. You're doing a lot of community work. You're doing work with youth and everything. The problem is that giving money to a profitable, for-profit organization is a problem. But if you can get under a nonprofit umbrella, that would work.
I definitely appreciate your advice, and I will do my due diligence to see how that is, and would ask that I can just reach out to council when I have that update and just allow that cultivation. Yes, thank you.
Great, thank you. I see on here that the sponsorship packages are gonna help to provide for a community mission and charity. Do you
Yes.
have some missions or charities that you've already singled out, or what do you look for when you're deciding where those funds go?
Thank you. So yeah, President, when I was talking to Counselor Martinez, and that was really, what I wanted to see in our discussion. And that's when we were really talking about the rec center, right? That is over kind of in just like the east side and providing that support. And I would love to see that transition into the teen center and to really honor. And that's where we did our fashion workshop. And it was an amazing outturn. And I think that's such a beautiful area. And we already have our young generation that are kind of calling that their second home. So why not continue to build that and foster that expansion?
Great. When you do these workshops, where do you post so people know that
Yeah.
you're doing them, or how do we find that information? Do you have
Yeah.
a website or?
Yes, they're definitely on the website and social media.
Yeah.
Correct.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you guys so much, and just get back in touch with Miss Solano when you have your umbrella to fall under.
Thank you so much. Appreciate you.
Thank you.
Okay, next we have the proposed mural art on the east side. Mr. Eric Saraceno, okay.
I have a layout design right here of the mural. Well, first of all, let me thank you guys for sharing my vision. And my vision is to work with the children on the east side. The east side, is a neglected part of the community. It's downgraded. The poverty rate is real high. Gang violence is like twice per capita of New York. And so what my vision is to work on Mitchell Park. It's a mural. It's a city park that has been, they started a mural on it, but it wasn't completed. And I had talked to Maria, I think her name was Maria Baca. She used to be part of the committee here, I believe. So if you could see, here's the park right here, okay? And what I have drawn is a layout design. It's a historical mural. I want to bring attention that there's a lot of history on the east side. The first settlers, Zebulon Pike, they said he camped at the Arkansas and the Fountain River, which is on the east side. So one of the first residents, and then you have Manuelito Baca. He had a place up there at Sugar Hill. So let me show you this. It's a historical depiction of the mural. What I designed, it's all.
It starts from left to right from the top, goes through here. All the guys that got killed in Vietnam is gonna be on there. President Kennedy. Geez, there's so much. There's a lot.
Yeah,
Yeah,
there's a lot.
it really is a historical depiction.
The soapbox derby,
Soapbox
which
derby.
was,
Very great.
Yeah,
It's the 1-to-1 ratio model.
Yes, it's to scale. It starts from.
What are the dimensions of like how?
This dimensions, it's like 3 blocks. 1 Oh. So here's the layout. It's right here. And that's right here. And the walls are really pretty bad, and they had started a mural right here. So what I want to do is get with the children, like the Boys and Girls Club, the Lucero Library already offered me space to work with the kids. I want to do a workshop, have hands-on experience, teach the kids, find out, what their skills are, because, art has saved my life. They say you could live without art, but art makes life worth living. So if what I want to do is produce some flyers like I gave you, not exactly like it, but go to other parts of the city, the Boys Club, the places where they have after school activities, which there's probably quite a few. Get in touch with teachers and just get the ball rolling, get them excited. I've worked with kids in the past and we produced great works of art. They're not like elementary murals. These are really honed out. Well, it'll be a historical and a tourist attraction with the art we produce. So yeah, the sky's the limit. And if we could change one child's life, then it would be all worth it. And so basically, in a nutshell, that's it. If you need more, if you read this brochure, it kind of tells you in a nutshell what a mural, what art would do for children, and how it makes them think outside of the box and creates creativity in them. And it's just a win-win situation. Plus, it'll help the East Side, we want to work with the kids and the parents. We want to get them excited. We want to record it on social media and, put it on Instagram and Facebook and get the buzz going. And, when it's said and done, we'll have like a barbecue, hot dogs, and maybe get the Chamber of Commerce to do a ribbon cutting and get the media involved. And it would be an exciting event. Plus, the children are the ones that my heart goes out to. If we could, protect them and show them how to work. Because I've worked with children before and they really get into it. And I know their attention span is limited. Sometimes you get a kid a day, but I will carry the bulk of it. I will complete it because this would be my baby and this would be worthy of a tourist attraction. And so also I want to propose this mural too. It is on the where the roller derby's at. As you can see, it's been tagged a few times, and the derby's coming up pretty soon, and it's filling a lot of areas. So this would be like two birds with one stone. And so we'll fix up the East Side and make it presentable, and give it its worthiness. Because there's a lot of history. There's a lot of, the Italians first lived there. The streetcar used to go through there. Manuelito Baca, before the massacre, he lived up there and he heard the gunshots, and Zebulon Peak camped right there on the East Side. Belford, the school's named after him, was a tremendous part of the East Side. Fremont, an explorer, lived on the east side. So, yeah, without the east side, there wouldn't be a Pueblo. So I think we should take into consideration our roots in our children, basically, number one. It's all about the kids, working with them. I did skits, I've done plays. I've worked with children. I've, you know, I have 5 children of my own, so I'm not no novice. So anyway, pretty much that's it. I mean, I got this whole agenda, but I don't want to bore you.
Thank you. Counselor Tencio.
Yeah, I've been working with the group over the last few months of community members on these. And one of the things that, besides working with Public Works to change some of the traffic patterns down the Lower East Side, one of the things that came up is more beautification of the east side. And one of the things that came up is basically the redrawing of the vaqueros on Joplin. But this mural at Mitchell Park was integral. And especially when we're going to be working with the kids at the same time. We're asking for $20,000 for this project. It's not a lot of money. I believe that artists should be paid. Unfortunately, a lot of people don't believe that. And artists are the most struggling economic workers out there practically. But we're asking for $20,000 to fund this project. And it'll occur during the months of
This month
starting in June
yeah.
and through the month of July,
as
probably.
possible.
That whole wall at Mitchell has to literally be replastered. It's so pockmarked. There's no way that you can paint on it. That's probably going to be the bulk of the money, is refacing that wall so that it could be painted on. And then he's going to be using the kind of paint that is kind of graffiti proof. And it'll be able to be maintained, and it's going to last a long time.
Yeah,
So
and I would guarantee
worthwhile project, I believe.
the, touching up, or, as long as it's in existence, because like I say, it's my baby.
Yeah.
And I take pride in my work. If you see, I don't know if you guys got the pictures I've done. Did you guys get them? So as you can see, we do quality work that is done. You guys need to see these. I'll show them to you. I did work at the Art Alliance. I worked with the kids there.
We all have.
Yeah, we got it.
But Larry, it says 25 on this document. Did you mean 25?
Well, if we could do 25, it'd be a lot better, because then he could do the vaquero. And actually the community members asked if we could do the Aztec warrior at the corner of 8th and Norwood.
Mhm.
So if we could get that done,
Yeah.
the 25 would be appropriate there. Because those mirror, I spent the Aztec warrior at 8th and Norwood is
We did
he's in a lot of shape.
we
So
did-
does the vaqueros, tell you.
we did some murals at the park. We
Yeah.
incorporated other pictorials on there.
Down at Plaza Verde.
Uh-huh.
Mr. Jagger, does this fall under ARPA?
Yeah, I think we'd have to go to ARPA first. So no, revitalization of public spaces does fall. But generally, when you have ARPA funds, you're gonna comply with the procurement standards of the city. I don't know how you would, if they want to use the funds to do revitalization of public spaces, assuming this is on city land, that's what there's a bunch
Yeah.
of unknown. Then the next step would be, how do you do the procurement consistent with our procurement processes? This is kind of a similar issue they ran into the.
We met with the Parks and Recreation Department, and they are willing to kind of sponsor the project. So if procurement could go through Parks and Rec, then the distribution of the money could go through Parks and Rec. And when Mr. Saraceno gets his work done, he can appropriately provide invoices and
So I think probably put it on the ARPA Wednesday agenda and we can understand from Stephen a little bit better what he wants to do as far as sponsorship, because I don't have any background on.
now to be mindful, some of this is for the Mr. Saraceno's work, not just materials and stuff. So
Yeah,
Madam
we're gonna have to
President.
get flyers and materials for the children because it'd be hands-on, classes where basically show them how to paint, not paint like a mural, but like a flower to give them, just get them familiar with the process of art. I give workshops and pictorials of stuff I've done and just really get them excited because every kid's an artist, The geniusness is to get back to that child. That's what Picasso said.
Ms. Solana, did you have something?
I did. Thank you, Madam President and City Council members. I've got a couple directions to go, but the first one is an exciting actual art opportunity for a grant through Bloomberg. It is a $25,000 award. It's due in 10 days. But we would significantly need a strict budget and also the content of the deliverables and the timeline. But the grant writer is blowing up my cell phone here to say that's probably an easier opportunity to access funds. And then when you do address and change city property and you use those federal funds, it is required to have an RFP. It's required to have, we're having trouble with our $45,000 of skate park building because we need to have the contractor to have a license in order to use federal funds. And so, it slows down when it gets to the actual through process of utilizing ARPA funds. This would still require the city to have RFPs for the painting and the redo of the wall, but we could work with both purchasing and parks to get that done. But if the grant opportunity is an avenue that would be like a first choice rather than ARPA, I'll connect you. I'll give you my card right now.
yeah, do.
And connect with meetings immediately with our grant writer. That could happen this week if that's an easier direction to go.
I
Yeah.
basically have the grant written out verbatim already, so maybe we could resubmit this, but embellish it to.
I think the importance parts of the Bloomberg grants that I just listened to you is the historical perspective of the East Side and what you intend to put on the mural and how it's going to connect to youth and going into the future to I think for them to have an educational component and then them to have ownership in their future moving forward.
Okay. Sounds like we have a plan moving forward then.
Sounds like it's doable. Yeah.
Okay, great.
Exciting. Can I share one more thing?
Yeah.
So, speaking of the east side, this is the east side going down the bridge. So, I had a vision of, well, you seen this one, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Have done.
of something like this. It's a slab of what a pebble looks like. And we would use concrete like this to erect it. And then paint on it, and we have, I'm going to see that. Pueblo, and then do the bronze of the 60s.
Okay, next we have the Hart proposed expansion.
Oh. It on? Hello, good evening. Are you ready for us? And I think we have a little PowerPoint here. You all know Stephen Meyer. He's going to help me out today. I'm Lynn Clark. If you haven't met me, it was nice to see y'all tonight. Okay, this is a little overview of the entire project. Stephen and I have been working on this since 2019. The plan view just gives you an overall concept of where the current convention center is, where Gateway Park is, the boathouse, and then the future channel extension. And so for those of you that have not seen the graphics of the boathouse, we just wanted to, show you the layout briefly. This is the south facing side. It would be facing towards Allen Hamel Avenue. The first floor at the water level has 3 garage bays, a concession area for like snacks and tickets and public restrooms. The upper floor has office space for HARP and conference rooms, and the top floor is an event space. It's a rooftop deck for any kind of event the public would like to hold up there. This is the north facing side of the building. This faces towards I-25. You'll see there's 3 garage doors there. That would be for some of our maintenance vehicles, a shop for a contractor, such as like Don's Landscaping. They keep a lot of tools on site that we need storage for. You'll see the breezeway next to the elevator tower. The public can come into that first floor. They can come into the second floor to visit at the HARP offices to do facility rentals and other business with us. And then they could reach that rooftop deck with that elevator tower. And you'll see part of the plaza out here behind us, where that grassy area is, and the paving is part of the future event space that we could have out there. So here's another look at the 3rd floor rooftop deck. You can see it's quite spacious. There's different kinds of furniture that could be put up there depending on what a public event would want to do, whether it was like a dinner, cocktail party, a movie showing. There's a projection wall for meetings, and there's a commissary kitchen that some of our restaurants in town could cater food and beverage up there. So as I referred to that live entertainment area out back, you'll see it's kind of catty corner to the existing PBR training center. It's a large flat area that we can bring in a truck stage, like you've seen at some of our events, a semi stage. We can bring in live music. It's a level area with paving. It's ADA accessible. There's public restrooms. It's a very nice space. So why we're here tonight is to talk about the project cost estimate. As you may be aware, this is a 1A project that was voted on in 2016 through the Pueblo County ballot issue. We have been going through the design process since 2019. Stephen is the ex officio representative on the HARP Authority Board. So he also, former planning department interim director. He's been with Parks and Rec quite a while, but he's been with the HARP project for many, many years. So it was quite helpful to have him as our project director. So he helped us when we completed Gateway Park, and Heritage Plaza, which is part of the RTA project list for the HARP Authority. We had several components that when that grant was written by Urban Renewal and the city of Pueblo, when we got those state tax increment funds, the boathouse and the channel, Veterans Bridge, Memorial Hall, Gateway Park, Heritage Plaza, all of those projects were on the list. So these are the latest ones that the HARP Authority is trying to complete. So our original estimates back in 2019 and 2020, this total project came to about $8.7 million. Then we had the pandemic. We dealt with the PUC. We were kind of questioning, would we get that funding from Excel and Comanche? So The PUC hearings held up our project for quite a while until there was a decision made about whether or not Excel would continue to pay their property taxes, because that's how these bonds are being funded, through those property taxes that there was a Tabor timeout for. So since 2019, and actually April 2020, we looked at the construction funding costs, and the total base bid was hovering about 9.1, and we added 20% to that, which is what I'm being told is a good number by the construction experts in our community. So if it came in less, that'd be great, but that's a good place to start. So we're looking at the project, hovering somewhere around 11.4. So this project at 11.4 would bring us about $422,000 in sales and use tax. It's just something to think about. There is some benefit back to the city for this project. The construction funding sources, Pueblo County 1A, you may be aware that we have a non-binding deal point memo by resolution with Pueblo County that's about 2 weeks old. Councilor Graham and Councilor Flores were quite helpful in getting communication through to the county to commit to $9 million from the 1A funds. Originally, we had been promised that they would fund it completely at 11.4. The story is that that's not possible. They have budgeted the money for other projects, and what they're willing to give us is $9 million, which is considerably a large sum of money, and it almost gets us over the goal line for this project. There's potential grants through the Hart Foundation, $275,000. In the past, the foundation has come to the table and written grants, done fundraising for a lot of construction projects on HARP. So the funding amount that gets us to is 9.2. The estimated project cost is 11.4. So the shortfall we're really looking at is about 2.1. And I really want to show you something else about the Hart Foundation. I know this came up in other conversations. So outside the bid of this project is the furnitures and fixtures, conference room equipment, building security system, exterior building signage, and directional signage. When we first started talking to the commissioners and the city about this project back in 2019, the foundation said, sure, we can raise some money for the project. What's not in the bid? So what we did not put in the bid was the furniture, fixtures, and equipment for the building. And that is what the foundation has been spending their time raising money for. So they have raised almost $450,000 to date. They're willing to try to raise another $275,000 to get us to that $752,000, which is a little bit over their original goal. It's a small foundation. There's 12 board members. We reach out to, well-known individuals in the community and ask them to invest in the project, and they've been very successful. When the county gives us official notification in writing of our $9 million being delivered, the Hart Foundation can push forward on some of those other grants. Those other grants would run, anywhere between $25,000, $50,000, maybe $75,000 per grant maker. So that's something they think that they can handle. And just to review the economic impact of the Riverwalk, our average sales tax per month is $34,000. We bring in about $400,000 a year. We have some of the most lucrative shops and restaurants in the city. The property tax evaluations are higher around the Riverwalk. Those restaurants and boutique shops provide jobs. We're curb appeal, right? Everybody loves Pueblo, and we want to show them the best we have. The Riverwalk has helped that, especially at your nighttime activities. There's economic and social resilience that goes along with this. I did a presentation in Washington, D.C. about 3 years ago, and we talked about this resilience in a community. And the world was pretty excited to hear about what Pueblo had done here. This is a very unusual project, and it's well respected across the country. The senators and congressmen that I gave the presentation to were really curious about why we chose a river walk. And I said, you know what Pueblo does? Plays to their strengths. We have water. So, you know, it's been a great thing for the community. It's been a great thing for business and a great thing for recreation down here. So the project timeline. I just wanted to give you a heads up on where we're at, even though the funding was not in place, right? Stephen, myself, quite a few of your city directors have been working on this project through the pandemic. A lot of Zoom calls over 2.5 years, putting the project together with their expert input to make sure everything was correct. So the HARP Authority submitted the construction plans to the Regional Building Department on May 22nd. We should hear from them pretty shortly on anything that needs to be updated. The City Purchasing Department helped me and Stephen put out the request for qualifications for general contractors. When you do a pre-qualification process, you get better pricing. So we're waiting to get that back. The city purchased the Ferguson's property and it was surveyed and a plat was created for the subdivision. There will be 2 lots. One lot will encompass the HARP channel. Lot 2 would be a future development, and that would be the piece of Ferguson's that's close to Santa Fe. Bid documents still require a final review. It's estimated that it's about 3 months from bid release to bid award. So if we were just going to say, you know, if I'm going to be an optimist, July 1st, if we sent out those bid documents, we could have construction costs to review by September 30th. And that would give us a lot more information about, is it really 11.4? Right? Because we're talking numbers and estimates from our construction friends. We need some real numbers to discuss like what the shortfall is. The county has given us a significant amount of money. We just have to close the gap. I think we have to work together. And that's really why we're here tonight, to ask for your help and your input and see what the next step is. So if you have questions for Stephen and I'd love to answer them.
Any questions for Mr. Meyer and Ms. Clark? Counselor Maestri?
Is the transit center going to be an obstacle in the way of this, the down there? Because you mentioned that in regards to the aquatic center.
I missed the first part of your question.
The transit center between where the building's supposed to go and the Ferguson's building.
Not this project. It won't be an obstacle. It would be for the aquatic center, but not the HARP expansion.
What is that? What is the authority right there? Is it the mechanical building, or what about that building?
In the corner
No.
of.
It's
Go back
like
to the-
right at the end of the river walk where it ends now. What?
Oh, that's the old radio shop.
Mhm.
Well, not the old radio shop. It's our radio shop, and it's still active and it will remain active. It still can stay there.
Oh, so
anytime.
it won't
Land
intrude with what we're
Right.
doing?
So you see the existing radio building. I think that's the one you're referring to by Mechanic.
Okay.
So yeah, we worked around it. We made sure that stayed in place for the meantime until the transit, finds a better home.
Mm-hmm. And didn't we just do a year's lease re-up the lease with, like, that we bought the building,
Ferguson's.
but we leased it back to them for a year?
We just closed on Ferguson's lot. Yes.
Did we not lease
couple
it
months
back to
ago.
them?
Yeah. And they have a 2-year lease.
So yeah, their 2-year lease starts
2-year.
April and they have 2 1-year options, but the hope is they'll be relocating earlier, but that's their options and that's their rights into the lease.
Mm-hmm. Would that delay our construction?
No, it'd be up there where that future development is, their current building is.
Mhm.
Where we show that little parking lot just north of the boathouse. When the green triangle, where you were talking about event center, that will probably have to be delayed and we'll probably make that as an adult in the construction. And we'll sit on that until the end of the period or see where Ferguson's at. We've heard, maybe not rumors, but we've heard that they're looking at moving up the street on Santa Fe. And so we're hoping that the timing of them getting out of there will be sooner than later and they
Mhm.
won't take up the whole 2 years of their lease.
And what about with the changes for the building codes? Are we going to be permitted by June 30th?
That's why then we took the plans down, made sure they were started the review process, and so we'll fall under the old building code or the current building code.
But don't you have to purchase the permit in order and be approved by June 30th in order to fall under the old building code?
Talking with Mark.
Mark Guerrero.
Yeah, sounded like that we just get on the review process and
He was going to write us a letter saying that we're grandfathered into the current building code without,
Yeah, because he didn't mention you and your project when he came and told us.
and we, if that's a question, we can verify that with him because that would be
Well, I
my
mean,
question
He
too.
mentioned the jail.
Mark did send an email out. It came to me saying that HARP would be under the same scope of work as the jail. I don't know if you received it as well or anybody else did, but I did receive it. I think Miss Solana received it too.
yeah, that was pretty important so we don't have to redesign and
Mhm.
Do you have anything else?
And so what you're asking us is to be to consider what's going on here, because you don't really have the actual construction costs because you don't have any bids. I saw the advertisement for bid through the city.
Right.
Uh-huh.
That's for the qualifications of contractors.
Mhm.
so
But-
that'll come back next week, into next week. We'll be able to sit down, and evaluate those proposals or those qualifications, say this lists are qualified to bid on this type of project. And then we can turn around, within the next few days and then give them the plans and specs and they can start working on real numbers. And we want to give them a good month to 45 days to work on numbers. And then we should have those real prices. So I think, Lynn's asked tonight is that we just keep an open mind and let's get real prices back, see where we're at. And we know we got 9 million from the county, and then we can figure out how, if we need to come up with additional funds and how we can do that.
Counselor Flores?
I'm looking at our attorney. I'm assuming that part of this discussion is going to be done in executive.
Yeah, that's
session.
gonna be, and we'll recover a lot of what's done a little bit.
So
Yeah.
we don't want to go into the details probably until then.
That's the whole purpose of instructing negotiators and.
Right.
But they certainly hear and have information if you had any questions, but I think you've
Okay,
asked.
So I'll wait to address those questions later and then also talk about the process. But I was interested in how the channel is going to look like on Santa Fe. I mean, is there going to be a wall there? It just seems like an odd thing. But
It's gonna kind of roll down, a couple overlook bump outs, but it's gonna be an elevation change of about, if I remember right, about 6 foot.
See it here. Yeah.
But it's not going to go under the road. It's going to
Not
stop.
at this point.
Right.
It starts setting it up for in the future. If the master plan was to go on past Santa Fe over, it could go under I-25 and around the old hill over there. And it was always envisioned to go under Santa Fe, but you still have to build a bridge, kind of like we did over here with Allen Hamel.
Mhm.
So we have a bridge going over it now. So that point never comes in time. Our extension would be, we'd have to build a bridge there at Santa Fe to go over, we kind of have to raise up over the channel extension.
But then the property in which you have a building now where you have your offices, that will be, was that number included in any of these numbers, the demolition and the raising of
Of
The-
the current
the
office.
current office?
No.
Okay. But
That's-
that has to come
That-
probably 2 years away when you can move
Right.
into the new
That'd
spot.
be a pad site.
That property belongs to Urban Renewal. The Hart Foundation purchased the building in 2013 to give us a home. And we have an agreement with Urban Renewal that there's an amortized schedule that the foundation may get some money back out of that building, depending on when it's taken back by Urban Renewal. But that was anticipated for the aquatic center. That's part of that campus.
Anybody else? Counselor Maestri?
So if Ferguson's doesn't move out, and if they say they take their 2 years, we have the possibility of construction costs increasing on the portions that we haven't completed, correct?
We could still build the channel. The only thing we couldn't build was that probably wouldn't build that parking lot or that little green triangle. We'd probably do some reconfiguration depending on fire access, but we could build all the river channel down below it and the boathouse down below it. And that conforms with their lease.
Mhm.
We own that corner of the world there, and that's not included in their lease, isn't that correct? I mean,
The top part of that parking lot actually is in part of their lease. At the time of the design of this, we thought they closed on this property a good 2 years ago. And so we left that in the design because we thought they'd be moved out, but we'll pull that out as part of the bid packet.
So
Yeah.
we'll go into detail
Yeah.
on that. That's gonna be
Okay.
covered.
Yeah, I think it's really important to think about like this money from the county as a one-time deal. And if the city doesn't come up with the shortfall, whether that's in our capital improvement budget for 2024, which, we'll be setting this year. And I know that these end funds you won't need until 2024. The county wishes, if we do not move forward with this project, they wish to receive the money back. So I would hope that the council and mayor and city staff would not be opposed to coming up with whatever that shortfall is, if needs to be made in a capital improvement project, because I'd hate to, I mean, I don't know any other time the county has ever written us a check for $9 million or, one of our entities. And so I'd hate to have to give that money back because of a shortfall. So I think that's important to remember too.
Agree.
Okay, if there's no further questions, thank you guys so much. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Okay, next we have, let's talk about it. Let's talk about it. Chief Solano and Andrew Byrne.
I'm gonna pull up a slide deck and you've got the remote there. President Graham, City Council, it's been a long time in presenting. We've had a request to ARPA in about a year in a holding pattern. But our presentation tonight, we're missing one of our presenters. But I'd like to introduce you to Mr. Andrew Burns, who is the Executive Director of Student Services at Pueblo City Schools, or Pueblo School District 60, who's really been, my partner and administrator in developing this. Let's talk about it. It's migrated to a couple of different other titles, but it stemmed from, if you turn to the next slide, we'll go through the history. You got it? Okay, thank you. So what our request for ARPA funds is before you tonight, and the theme of the evening coincidentally did seem to be around art and youth and understanding from the demographer's standpoint. That was a really good introduction. It all gelled together nicely, and I'm happy to be the bookend of the conversation about art this evening. It is an ARPA request, and we'll get into the details, of $2,575, which is 25% of a total budget package for the summer program. The total budget will be $10,300 that we'll circle back to at the end. And the district, through a grant, will cover 75% of the $10,300. And the Summer Creative Expression Program is a continuation of a prototype, a pilot, and an extended project for middle schoolers in response to the COVID pandemic for youth, for social emotional wellness and behavior. And the next slide is going to take us through the journey. In the beginning of 2022, the city was selected to be part of through Bloomberg and the Johns Hopkins University, the Center for Civic Impact, which was innovation training. And it was really based on learning a process for human-centered design. So the other presentations that were before council this evening, probably just, it's a natural, intuitive way to know that there's these resources for youth and to promote art for wellness. But we actually followed a strict 11-month program, 11 of us in the city, including the fire chief, the police chief, the judge, and then 8 other of us. We met we met weekly online with our advisors. And somewhere in the middle of the process, we had to narrow our scope, which the mayor's direction was focus on youth violence. And they said that is just too broad. And so they helped us narrow the scope. And it was really the reduction of youth and access to gang activity. And then through our more than 30 interviews in the community and through research by all of us, we actually focused it on where they found the best intervention and prevention program was a focus on middle school age kids. And so after the middle school age kids design, it was design a prototype. And in one of the sessions nationally, I participated in something called a social emotional Let's Talk About It program in Florida and in Southern California, where they have a van that actually provides tacos, but it is an opportunity for middle schoolers during their lunch hour to have access to mental wellness counselors and activities that is, you know, free from judge and free from having to actually be adjudicated to attend or required by school administrators. And so it worked in those two different cities that then was the impetus to find a partner. And, you know, we're not going to go into middle schools without finding our partner in the district. So I called Mr. Burns, who we met with weekly during COVID, and I said, I have a really cool idea. We have a very cool idea. And he said, let me take it to administration and see if there's a middle school that will pilot this. If we test it first, and then we might pilot if it's successful. And voila, we went to Heaton Middle School with the principal, who was fabulous. We started and found someone to deliver a program. We called it art therapy, but we whispered that because the students don't know that they were in therapy. They were in a Let's Talk About It art session about social emotional wellness and behavior. And the prototype was so successful through November and December that Mr. Burns said, let's take it to administration and see if we can extend this with the resources to go into the spring semester of 2023. Our art delivery program is led by Ryan Yank of ACES Expression. And we went back to Heaton Middle School, and I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Burns here now. What that's led us to after successful spring semester is a summertime art program, changing the words from Let's Talk About It, which the kiddos really liked because they got tacos, you know, once a week at their break. But they also got the message that they got to talk about their feelings through the 2-hour presentation, and it made a difference. And what our goals were when we were establishing with the Innovation Center is, you know, you've got to come up with a research and what are you about to approve here? What are you about to address? And what we wanted to address is then the reduced office referrals to the principal, improving class behavior, managing their emotions, improving attendance for students to want to go to school, improving actual academic performance in the classroom, and really enhancing their self-regulation of their own behavior. And voila, if we turn to the next slide, I'll turn it over to Mr. Burns, who's going to tell you what happened in the school system.
Thank you, Ms. Solano, and good evening, Madam President and City Council members. It's my pleasure to speak with you on this great partnership between the city, the ACES School of Creative Expression, and D60. To elaborate on Ms. Solano's remarks, recent findings from the National Assessment of Education Progress suggest that the COVID-19 pandemic has impacted K-12 students' social and emotional well-being across the United States. These findings are echoed in the views of many K-12 parents. About 61% from parents in a nationwide survey suggested that the COVID-19 pandemic impacted their students' social and emotional needs. Fortunately, for parents who said that there was such an impact, 74% of their students are starting to rebound from that. That said, here locally at D60 and with our partners like the city and the School of Creative Expression, we're identifying innovative and new strategies to support the social and emotional well-being of our students. One of those strategies was the Let's Talk About It pilot program. Through this program, we used art to connect with students to help them with their self-management, social awareness, relationship skills, and responsible decision-making. The pilot program, as Ms. Solano said, was run by Ryan Yank, along with Michelle Anderson, a social worker intern, and Lauren Hill, a psychology student. They prepared weekly lessons based upon the needs of students, and they worked on the social and emotional skills, goal setting, and coping skills with our students. Each week, they presented a different expression of art around a theme. The 3 mentors then worked with small groups of students using the Art Expression Project to encourage students to discuss topics that were personally impacting them. As the slide highlights, a total of 21 students participated in the pilot program. It was held at Heaton, and Heaton students were involved, and they met on a weekly basis after school. Food, often tacos, were provided. Even Ms. Alano delivered tacos to the individuals. The curriculum included lessons on topics such as positive self-talk, confidence building activities, language development, self-care, coping skills, and self and social awareness. Next slide, please. Overall, we are pleased with the results of the pilot program. In fact, I could tell you that we are on to something big when after the very first session, 2 students came up and hugged Mr. Rank with their gratitude and their appreciation. From a macro level perspective, the pilot program allowed students to engage in self-reflection, and that's important. Generally speaking, when students are experiencing stress and anxiety, it can be difficult for them to focus and pay attention, especially in school, to keep their emotions in check, and to handle frustration in an appropriate manner. Providing students with the opportunity to reflect upon their experiences and accurately identify their feelings through journaling, conversations, or in the case of Let's Talk About It, through art, it can be a transformative skill for our students as it allows them to recognize, label, and share their feelings. Once students can recognize and share their feelings, they can begin to hone their self-regulation skills. As students return from the pandemic, the need to focus on improving self-regulation skills, especially for our middle school students, became more noticeable. Rather than looking at punitive responses for possible misbehavior, as a district, we've worked to understand and identify the root cause of the decision-making from our students and then help students respond differently. Forming a stronger bond with our educators, or in this case with Ryan and his team, has resulted in our students feeling cared for rather than judged. That connection has certainly occurred through the pilot program, and we're excited about the progress that we've seen and are excited to continue the program. As the slide highlights, we've identified outcomes that were noticed immediately by the school: reduction in behavior referrals to the office, improved academic performance, application of new skills, and better judgment in social situations. Additional students attended future sessions. The staff, our educators at Heaton, saw that students were demonstrating greater resiliency and greater self-regulation. And then finally, the principal at Heaton developed a new art therapy program that she incorporated into the school. All students by the end of this year were doing a 15-minute art lesson in the middle of the day that focused on mindfulness, breathing, and other activities to regulate them after lunch. Next slide, please. We're looking forward to continuing the success of the pilot program by offering a creative wellness class through Ryan Yank and the ACES School of Creative Expression this July. July is a good time because summer school will have concluded by then and students will have fewer resources available to them. The program will be available for up to 30 middle school students from across all of D60's middle schools. We'll begin advertising and registering students for the program during our summer school, which begins next week. I now turn the presentation back to Ms. Solano.
For sustainability, before I talk about the budget, which you can go to the next slide, there was also an opportunity to apply for a youth crime prevention grant that addressed prevention and intervention. And we submitted the grant about 10 days ago for nearly $2 million that would make this now summer program into a 2-year grant funded program. And one day, hopefully see the van with the Let's Talk About It on the side that fits so perfectly with our Pueblo culture. It will also then sustain the teen centers, which we hope to collect the data from this summer. After the 10 weeks, that grant would sustain those teen center Friday and Saturday nights. If not, every Friday and Saturday, once the grant was awarded, it would definitely be for the time that they're out at fall break and winter break and spring break, and see how we just have to collect the data for the teen center. But we have the collection of the data, and I've got fingers crossed that the city with no match will receive that grant. With respect to this summer program, a very cool opportunity. We have received a grant for $186,000 that we'll be seeing in front of City Council here to bring on a coordinator of for a spoke and a hub kind of situation where the hub would be to hire a coordinator and all the aspects of this innovation training that is the school district and our school resource officers and the courts and our PD department and the city and Boys and Girls Clubs and all the others in the community that work on addressing reduction of youth violence have an opportunity to come together with the hiring of one coordinator. So you'll be seeing that grant come before you soon. But now back to this budget. The request here, and thank you to District 60, who has the majority of the cost here. This just covers the program itself. It will be run through the art studio at ACES, which is located in the Rocky Mountains at Rocky Mountain Sayre, and it is requesting a 1 month's rent that will help him operate through July, where normally then there's not quite as much activity. It is a $6 per student, materials and supplies per session. There are 2 sessions. Each one will be 2 weeks, Monday through Thursday, for I think 4 hours, which includes the break with some lunch involved for middle schoolers. I call it taco because I'm still stuck on Let's Talk About It, even if everybody else has moved on. The paid interns that are essential to be at each of the stations to help with the art therapy and walk through and talk about, you know, the impact of improving all those items that are important to the schools for youth development. The contract for Mr. Yank is $600 per session for a total of $10,300. The district will cover $7,725, which is 75% through grant funds. They've already been committed to this project if the city and you will approve the 25% at $2,575. And next slide. And I think Mr. Burns and I are available for questions, but that concludes our presentation.
Great. Any questions? Councilor Martinez Ortega.
Thank you, Madam President, and thanks both for putting this together. I think this is a great program that could have great benefits to our youth. My concern is the location, Heaton. Why was that school chosen for this particular project, and why not maybe some of the lower socioeconomic schools?
Sure, that's a great question. I appreciate your question. We needed to find a school that had the ability to implement the program quickly. And so I reached out to Heaton, the principal there, and she's somebody that looks for new innovative strategies, not to say other principals don't, but she's been a seasoned principal, has been there at Heaton at quite some time, so has a strong structure in place and was able to implement it fairly quickly. This all unfolded within about a span of a 3 to 4 week period of time. So we turned on a dime pretty quickly. And fortunately, we found a partner in Heaton.
Great.
But for the summer program, we'll certainly advertising and reaching out specifically to families that are.
Oh, okay, great. And let's think about for future projects to reach out to like Risley, Corwin, and some of those other places that probably have a higher risk of some of those at-risk folks being in their population in schools. Thank you.
Councilor Tencio.
Yeah, Roncalli and Pitts to come to mind. Those schools are in pretty bad shape. They really need a lot of help.
With the successful receipt of the grant and the mobile van opportunities for Ryan or another contractor to rotate the different middle schools is the design in both California and Florida.
Well, I think it's a great project to do, and if we could expand it to every single school, that it would be better. Maybe not right away, but since it's a pilot project, I think it could be. There's a lot of merit to it.
Anecdotally, I wanted to add in our research and in our interviews, it was very interesting that we were quite siloed in the impact and the heavy weight of addressing youth and their opportunities to not head towards a gang. For instance, when I interviewed the superintendent of school district 60, when we interviewed as a team, she felt solely responsible. This is the school district's responsibility. And when you interview the chief of police, it was like, what can the PD do? This is their responsibility. And when you interviewed Boys and Girls Club, they just took it on themselves to say, we need to provide after school activity because this is our responsibility to keep kids from heading in this direction. And, you get and receive the mayor's calls and letters that said, Mayor, what are you doing about the youth and particularly the opportunities for middle schoolers? And so we found in that interview and research in our team that we were pretty disconnected in thinking that we were individually responsible for solving a problem that collectively and convening, coming together, I think this position and our $186,000 grant could probably change the future of communication in this area.
Solano, can you tell us how the students are chose, the 30 students?
Sure, we work closely with our counselors and our social worker in our schools, as well as our teachers, to identify students who are demonstrating at-risk behaviors or challenges at home. And so we're going through a careful review of students to see who would be a good fit. We reach out to their families, explain the program to them. It's provided at no cost to them, or the pilot program was, and same thing with the summer program. Explain the program to the parents, get their support, get their buy-in for the program, and then invite the students to the program as well. So we look at a variety of at-risk factors, and then we work closely with the parents to get their support.
Great. And then one other thing I was just going to mention and ask if this is an option, since it's going to be at Rocky Mountain SARE, the Pueblo Food Project is also housed in there. Can they provide the food and cut out that $1,900 that you have in the budget?
I have not asked them yet, but it's certainly an option that I could see. I don't know if they're not usually one to, they're not going to be able to cook it, and we provided it every day, but we can certainly see if there's the water or the cookie or whatever they need that could
just
reduce it.
The ingredients, it would seem like that would fall in there.
Yeah, well, they're not cooking, but they can certainly reduce the cost by the water and the cookie and whatever else we might need. Thank you for that.
Councilor Maestri, did you have something?
Oh.
Okay. Anybody else? All right. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Do you need direction? So staff needs direction, whether we want to see this on an upcoming regular agenda.
Yes.
I'm a yes.
Yes.
Councilor Page, yes. Councilor Maestri, yes. I think the direction is to move forward with the 4 counselors you have up here. Okay, moving along, we have ARPA, the bleachers, Joe Santos ball field, Stephen Meyer.
Hi again. This is regards to some ARPA funds being requested to put in some bleachers over at Joe Santos. And just a little background on it. Back when COVID came along and we had to figure out how to keep people further away from each other, we removed the bleachers back then. And so it came about, before we started to bring them back out, we came to understanding that safety concerns of those 5-tier bleachers, 5-seat row bleachers were not safe, not considered safe, and without the backdrop or back fence railing, so people wouldn't fall off. And so we ended up not replacing them yet. And so it's come to our attention that there was some desire to have those bleachers set out there. I hadn't heard a whole lot of complaints until recently, but it seems to be a strong desire to get the bleachers back out there. And so that's why we're requesting. We got some bids. I think they're a little over $30,000 for 4 sets of bleachers, and we're requesting ARPA to use ARPA funds for those bleachers. And it'll be a 5-row with the barrier on the backside. That's my report.
Good idea.
Was that too fast?
No, I've had a couple of people in the softball community talk about that, so. it's a good
Yeah,
idea.
and it's unfortunate, those old bleachers, we still have We've still got several sets of them laying around. We have several sets out at the Honor Farm at the drag race, along the drag race. But we need to either get them out of service or figure out how to make them safe.
Mr. Meyer?
Yes.
What about Stoddard? There's a lot of softball, baseball activity down there.
Right. I think depending on what programs are going where, we can look at maybe seeing how we can either purchase more in our next year's next year's budget. To start providing bleachers back down at those fields, because we also removed all those at Stoddard.
Is there any in the scrap of the old bleachers? Are
We-
they aluminum?
I think one of the thoughts is I was gonna have our mechanic welders take a look at them, see what it would take if we cut off the top couple rows, and just make them small bleachers, if we could utilize those in the meantime. But also look at what it would take to purchase additional ones down the road.
Counselor
But is there
Meister?
any scrap value in what you have?
There may be a little bit of scrap value. I mean, the frames is steel.
Mhm.
The tops are aluminum.
Aluminum.
So there may be a little scrap value in them. We'll definitely scrap if there is a value. We do take that metal stuff to the recycle place.
Mhm.
Ms. Solana.
Counselor Meister, would you like for us to look at the cost of how many are at Stoddard Field right now? I don't think it's in a QTC that would qualify for ARPA, but we can certainly check when we meet Wednesday morning if you want us to see how
I
many.
would love, I'd like to. I see the programs are going on over there right now and
T-ball starting this week, so
We take a look at that Wednesday.
Don't we still
Yeah.
have some money left too in non-QTC?
We do. Oh, no, well, we have money left in the $10 million
Yeah.
of the lost revenue.
So that would work, right?
That would work there. That's why I said if you'd like for us to have that discussion on Wednesday, we can look at budget and we will be back with that
I
information.
mean, right now it's, when are you going to be able to get them? I mean, you're gonna have to order them.
I think, well,
Are
we
we
got the
gonna have them for
bids.
this season or they're just gonna be
We
ready
got the
for next?
bids. We did check. They are on the SAM website. They are registered so we can give award the ARPA funds to them. And I think they said it was like a 4-week delivery.
Mm,
So we'd have to get them ordered sooner than later.
mhm, mhm. Well, at least we just need to restock the fields with them
Yeah, I think. that's-
regardless.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Counselor Flores.
Yeah, I just wanted to follow up, I was the one that got the call, 3 weeks ago, I believe, in regard to this is the field that's in the Ray Aguilera Park. investment.
Right.
And there, when you remove the bleachers, everybody was concerned down there that, to me, it became an economic development issue too, because we were, that tournament, I guess, is huge.
It brings in a lot.
We were getting people from Denver, from Grand
Right.
Junction, Durango, and there was a lot of community people that were very concerned that there was no seating whatsoever. So number one, I wanted to thank you and Mike because you kind of patched things and you did bring.
Yeah, made do with what we got.
Yeah, and you made do with what we had. So I wanted to thank you for that and I appreciate responding so quickly.
I'm glad you brought it to our attention because honestly, Mike or I, neither one of us received a complaint about not having seating. And so it's unfortunate people don't have the wherewithal to call us and they call you,
Yeah.
but at least we're getting it taken care
Yeah,
of.
I think it just came as the last, they were
Yeah.
just worried that it was going to happen
Right.
that weekend. But the other thing is the risk management piece too. You don't want people getting hurt.
Right.
So this is a good time to get rid of
Make it
that.
right.
And get some new bleachers in that area because that field is used a lot.
It is.
And so,
It really is.
I'll be supporting that.
You need staff needs direction moving forward. Okay. Yes. Counselor Flores, yes.
Yes.
Counselor Maestri.
Yes, and let's try to get Stoddard
We'll
to-
follow up with an email communication to you with respect to, are there additional ones? How many are there? Is it in a QTC or is it your direction to use lost revenue? And all of those would be on a resolution. So it's just a one meeting conversation. Probably not the 12th though, likely to be the 26th because the 12th, it'd have to be done by Thursday.
Counselor Tencio?
This is off topic, but you're working, you got the consultant for the softball complex? Can you let me know when that's gonna start working?
Yeah, we should be setting up an initial meeting to kick that off here soon.
Okay, I'll be gone next week, but the following week, that's. Okay,
All right.
Okay, item H, the city council board and commission update. We're gonna skip that tonight and move that to a regular meeting so that the community gets a feedback from all of us live. And so if that's okay with everybody, I
No.
assumed it would have been. No, you didn't. Okay, so at this time, we are going to go into executive session. I think we're gonna stay in here and do that if that works.
No, we're gonna actually go into
Do
the,
we have to go in there?
I think so, yes. And then you have to make a motion and
Are
get,
you sure we have to go in there?
I think so.
Yeah, this IT center.
I defer to,
Oh, IT set it up in there? I'm sorry, Miss Solano. Okay, well, we're moving.
still have to make a motion.
Oh, okay.
second, and-
So we need a motion to go into executive session for the purpose of determining positions relative to matters that may be subject to negotiations, developing strategy for negotiations and or instructing negotiators under CRS section 24-6-4024E.
Second, and the additional information is HARP expansion and Southside landfill.
Okay, we need a
Second.
vote.
Yes. Yes.
Okay, and we are moving into session.
So just for the record, no adoption of any proposed policy, position, resolution, rule, regulation, or formal action shall occur to any executive session that is open to the public, and you may adjourn.
I don't think that stuff works.